it means that there is nothing wrong with Putin, that the Putin is there. He's trying to kind of keep a balance in the country, trying to distance from oligarchs, what he's, at least that's the way the image he's trying to build. And obviously the whole scandal about this movie was about this famous stone scandal, which was there in 2004, I think. And the fact that the British, the advisor of the Prime Minister suddenly says that, yes, there was a stone, it shows the effectiveness of the Russian Secret Service, which is also good for Mr. Putin. So in all cases, it was a very wise decision for the Russian authority to allow this movie and show it for the Russian public, because it just shows the Russian authority from the best side.
I was also actually interviewing the director of the movie, Paul Mitchell, and he was also saying that the movie is not pro-Putin or anti-Putin. He tried to make just a balanced and unbiased film about last decade in Russia. And another good thing about it is that I think when Russian viewers will watch the movie, they will see that people in Great Britain, they don't have any big tensions with Russia, and the Cold War is over 20 years ago, and there are no difficult relations between two countries, because in Russia I think there are still many people who think that there is some sort of a state of Cold War between East and West, and the movie is really balanced, and I think that Russian viewers, they might understand that the relations between our two countries, between Great Britain and Russia, are getting better and better.
But if, as Anton says, this is the most critical film that's ever been screened, essentially, in Russia about Putin, doesn't that in some way kind of challenge what perceptions of him are going to be?
I don't think it's very critical. It's just a number of facts, and there is nothing new except that story about the spy stone in that movie, because all that facts are pretty well known. They are just gathered into one film that divided into 4 parts. So that makes an impression, because they are in one in the same body, and they come to you in one queue. So that makes an impression, but I don't think it criticizes very much Putin or it hails him.
Just a reminder, you're listening to Meet the Media on The Voice of Russia with me, Scott Craig. This week I'm speaking with Dmitry Elovsky, Anton Volsky and Viktor Balagadde about opposition protest movements in Russia. Anton, are there any indications that how Putin is being handled in the media are changing? I mean, for example, there was this recent martial arts event that Putin attended where he was booed by the crowd, which was being shown live on Russia 2. But it was edited out. The booing was edited out of subsequent news broadcasts. That, on the surface of it, would seem to sort of indicate that actually news still doesn't feel empowered to be able to take a more critical view of Putin. Is that fair?
The situation is changing now, but you cannot tell that it will change the whole media climate in the country. Yes, there are changes now, but as for a BBC movie, for example, you would not been able to imagine this kind of film appear 6 months ago on Russian television. Now it's possible, but in another 6 months on Russian television, probably not. So, yes, something is changing, but if it's a climate change, no. At least we don't know.
I wanted just to ask you what other stories you've been having your eye on this week as well. Dmitry, what have you been looking at?
Yeah, I found 2 very interesting stories, actually. One comes from Russia, from Russian regions, from Urals, and it's about Mr. Mavrodi. He was very famous in the beginning of the 90s. He was building a financial pyramid, and he was involving many people into his business and trying to build it from the very beginning to the very top. So lots of people participated in that and brought a lot of money, and some of them got some very good percent from the deals, but the vast majority just were fooled and didn't get any money. And now he's trying to campaign again in some Russian regions. And there are some billboards, and there are ads that advertise his new company. some people say that he's starting to get more supporters these days, because people are looking for something new, and they still remember that some of them got the money from the early pyramid. But some people say that, that's more like from the theoretical field. Some people say that his appearance was provoked by some local authorities who are trying to bring him back to the politics and to make some sort of an enemy from him. And there is another story that comes from Australia. The guy who's Nick Vujicic, I think his name, he was born without legs and without arms, and he was struggling for many years to live his life as a normal guy, and he tried to campaign through worldwide to persuade people to not to give up. And this week he got actually married, and everybody he's very popular in blogs and in internet, so people in internet were just applauding him and saying that that's the man.
It's one of those sort of feel-good stories that kind of does the round just on Twitter and so on.
Exactly, just not to finish on the minor note.
Anton, in terms of what other stories you've been looking at, what's caught your eye?
There was an official data published this week or last week that Russians took number 1 place among the investors' visa holders here in the UK. That means that Russian tourists or Russian citizens are the leading and the most rich tourist in the UK, and you can doubt that if it's good or bad. You can turn it either way.
And here we sit in St. James's as well, which is where you don't exactly not hear Russian voices around, particularly in the building that we're in as well. Viktor, what have you been looking at?
Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, I really appreciate what the guys, the kind of stories the guys picked up for today's show, because the fact that there are, Russians are taking the first number. I mean, they have the highest number of wealthy individuals coming over to this country. For me, it's more like a bad kind of news than good news, because that means that the capital is just escaping the country, which is not very good. And there is a huge coincidence with what Dmitry said about Mavrodi, because actually I was approached just 2 days ago, and it looks like we'll be having a huge interview with Mavrodi in our paper in Kommersant UK on the last page, and I have plenty of questions for that chap, because he's a very exotic personality. He's the guy who, the time when the country did not know what is TV advertisement, his company was one of the first companies who started heavily advertising on the first channel, on the first national channel, and everybody remembers about this guy. Well, I don't really remember the name of the hero, but the guy was dreaming to buy boots for his wife, and the advert was saying that invest into this financial pyramid and you'll get a lot of benefit from it, financial benefit, and you'll be
His name was Leonid Golubkov.
Exactly, his name was Leonid Golubkov. Yeah.
Very Russian, very typical Russian.
And he could afford to buy leather boots for his wife, and so on and so on. And now this guy, I just wonder how the memory is very short, because the whole country was furious with what he did, because in a couple of years he managed to build a huge financial pyramid. A fraction of people benefited from it, but the majority of people just lost their capital.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but my news is about Henry Moore. Henry Moore exhibition is opening in Kremlin Museums, and British Council was very kind to organize a fantastic press tour last week for the Russian media here in London, and they took us to the Henry Moore's his estate, and showed his fantastic sculptures. And the reason why I'm talking about it is also there was an exhibition of Francis Bacon, another famous British artist, and it was also arranged in Moscow. And I just see the way rapidly the cultural life between two countries is developing. That there are so many cultural exchanges, there are so many people traveling there and forth. And unfortunately, you cannot say that on the political part of the relationship between Britain and Russia. The politicians are some way behind, unfortunately. Yeah.
Politicians are always some way behind. I think that's a good note on which to end. My thanks to my guest, Dmitry Elovsky, Anton Volsky, and of course to Viktor Balagadde. You're listening to Scott Craig on The Voice of Russia. Stay with us.